Okay, Luke. Well, this is the cold opener. Do you know what a cold opener is?
Cold opener? What do you mean?
Well, I sort of knew what it was, but I looked it up as well. AI told me it's the thing where it's the bit before the opening titles in a TV show or a radio show. Apparently it hooks the audience, right? This is what we're doing now. We're hooking the audience. They're getting to know us. They're getting ready for some excitement about AI and all of that sort of stuff. And it enables it starts in the middle of the action, and apparently that's already happened because we've already pressed record. So the action has started.
Okay, and it's a bit unscripted, this bit.
Well, yes. I mean, there is no script. Exactly right. And it's supposed to be pretty short as well. So maybe we fill it with some. How's your week been?
Oh, it's been a good week. I saw Tommy Emmanuel playing guitar at the Sydney Opera House.
Are people outside of Australia going to know who the heck Tommy Emmanuel is? Isn't he someone from like the 1980s or 90s or something?
He's very experienced. He is an absolutely brilliant guitarist, and what a showman. And in the Sydney Opera House, the audio was just superb. It was crisp. We were up there close to the front and really rocked it out, and just a fabulous experience. Yeah, Tommy Emmanuel, look him up.
Now, come on, you had more than that go on in the week. Tell the audience about,
the Marrickville.
How much disappointment happened to you when you tried to, get into a pub.
Well, okay, so Saturday night we were out seeing a comedian in Marrickville at the Factory Theatre, Luke Heggie, which he was also superbly funny. Before the show, we went and had a beer. At a great brewery called Filter, PH Filter. And then we had a pizza at Madre. Beautiful.
This sounds like a sponsorship deal that's going on. Luke, come and cut to the chase. What happened?
Well, after the show, it was a good show. Having a laugh with my son, we thought we'd get one more beer in. The night was young. So we went into a batch brewing. I went to order and they deemed me too inebriated to serve, Adam. I'd had one beer that night. They decided that was it for Luke Silcock on his way.
If you've spent time with Luke is a super friendly guy. He can talk though, and is sometimes a little unstoppable. And so you're basically suggesting you were thrown out of a pub for being yourself.
This is what's happened to me. Yes, being the authentic Luke wasn't enough to get me a beer at this particular location.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that, Luke. I've had a pretty rough week. I've been fighting with AI most of the week, and so that's on brand, on topic. Oh, look, I've been playing around with a bunch of different tools we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show, but oh my gosh, ripping my hair out with some of the results I'm getting. It's super frustrating.
But, so you've been trying for productivity, Adam, but you've been struggling with trust. Is that right?
And that's what today's show is all about. The AI trade-off, productivity versus trust. This is the Due Diligence Show.
ThoughtSource Consulting presents the Due Diligence Show. And now, from the Deal Room, please welcome your hosts, Adam Jaques and Luke Silcock.
Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the second episode of our second season of the Due Diligence Show. My gosh, we are going great guns here at the Due Diligence Show. I've got Luke Silcock with me. Hey, Luke.
Hey, Adam. How you going?
I'm very well, thank you. Today we are talking all about trade-offs in AI. Of course, our second season of the Due Diligence Show is all about AI. Our first season, more about the M&A process and that sort of thing. You can head over to thoughtsourceconsulting.com and check that out if you like as well. Got to give ourselves a plug for that. But today is all about AI productivity versus trust, where the productivity gains maybe are baked off or are balanced about the trust that you can currently put into AI. What do you think, Luke?
Look, it goes to the heart of what we're grappling with in 2025. Again, this will be dated, won't it, Adam? May 2025. There's this imperative. every business and workplace is looking at how it can leverage AI. It's a competitive threat. It's a competitive opportunity. There's lots of opportunity down at the department level around the world. But then there are these trust problems when you just ask either a basic question and get some made up nonsense back from your chat bot of choice or your AI model. And we explored that a little bit around how LLMs or large language models are trained and how that might result in them being a little bit off when it comes to certain topics. But tell me, what were you trying to do? Was it a productivity gain you were looking for earlier this week? And what was your experience?
Well, I had my personal experience this week with AI, and I'm trying to inject it. It's like a different way of thinking, right? You've got to you start thinking about, first off, can I get help with something, and then trying to craft first off, I think of a programmatic crafting of prompts, right? So I'll be very prescriptive about, give me a blah, 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 versus I'm Adam Jaques, I'm doing a podcast, I'm researching a company, I've got these interests and really setting it up, right? So first off is changing my mindset. But the case for this week was about researching some articles that were in the news, right? And I was building out a system that would pull interesting articles that I may find interesting, summarize them, create a take on them, and that sort of thing. And it became very apparent very quickly that ChatGPT was just lying to me, right? It was just. But the thing is, it's so, and I don't just use ChatGPT, and we'll get to that in a second, but in this case, it's so plausible. Like it's like a really good liar.
Yep.
It's dealing with someone that's, I don't know, almost gaslighting you or something like that, where it's so convincing that it's not until you actually do the human check on the links, all of that sort of thing, that it's like 404, this link does not exist. And it's quoting articles that are just not there.
Yep.
But the weird thing is it's pulling information that is newish, and there are certainly articles from, say, a certain news source that they've written about.
Yep.
So it's very close to the truth, but what it's referencing was completely wrong. And that's where it all sort of fell apart for me.
So then we've got to use the right tool for the right job. I think maybe just sharing that you bounced around a little and sort of almost shopped around for what was an AI that was going to be more verifiable or better suited for this particular job.
Well, here's my situation at the moment. I am coming from a place of still every day learning something new, as hopefully most of us are with AI. But there is this plethora of solutions out there at the moment. We hear about the big ones, the Google Geminis and the Copilots and the Chat GPTs and all of that type of thing. But there are a lot more as well. So I was pointed in the direction of Perplexity, which is another one, and started using that as the solution. And I mean, it came back with stuff that was real, right? And it came back with links that were validated. Now, into my workflow, I ended up building that human check. It wasn't an AI-based human check. It was an actual check to go off to links and make sure they came back with a 200 success, if you like, and weren't coming back with 404s and that sort of thing. However, this solution was giving me a lot more accuracy, which was great. But that's the problem for me, is there's so many different variants out there at the moment, and I think in given time, the industry will collapse into a few, and there'll be less sprawl, I think, with different models and different reliabilities, and use this for image creation versus use that for doing deep research and analyst reviews and that sort of thing.
I think that's been a really good one to kick us off. I think what we're first going to explore around businesses being productive is you've got to think about how much error you can tolerate. So if you've been using, your basic computing tools, and they've helped improve your spelling. Certainly that's happened for me over the years.
Yeah.
And got to make sure that I'm using the spell check before something goes out the door, because it will lift the quality of my written work. So then if you think about using an AI to generate the content in the first place, and then use maybe a chain like you've been considering there, where you've got one AI perhaps doing a creation job or pulling in data, another one content spinning off that, and another one maybe verifying or helping create an output that lines up with what you're trying to get done. I mean, ultimately, these workflows are similar to what businesses are trying to put in place. If you're checking customers and onboarding customers, what is your process flow? How do you get to know those customers? How do you verify they are who they claim to be? How do you then help meet their needs with the right amount of human support? And a lot of companies are looking at automating process flows like that. Imagine you go on to a customer into an institution. You might not deal with a human for a long time, and you might do things that traditionally would involve contact with humans, but it's smooth, it's automated, it's leveraging technology. And under the hood, a lot of those companies are going to be leveraging AI to get things done. Their process automation opportunity here is what we're talking about. Faster and better decisions. So, how much should be your credit limit is something that a financial services company is trying to work out. It's trying to then help you get set up. So what do you want to do? And for us, for example, we do a lot of foreign exchange transactions between Aussie and US. Well, that's something that we've previously sort of shopped around and set up a financial services arrangement specifically for that requirement. But you can anticipate what's going to happen is all that feature set is going to become more and more an expected part of what banking business includes or wraps up.
Yeah, I look, absolutely. In terms of process automation and decisions, the foreign exchange one is interesting because we do have to decide when to move money around based on what the current rates are between countries, and there's no reason why AI can't be helping with that. It's not at the moment, but it absolutely could be. But what about some of the customer experiences, Luke? I found that through the week, again, through my use of products, and this is what we bring to some of our clients as well, is ideas around how this can help. At the moment, software products, tech products that are reasonably modern are all trying to jump onto the AI bandwagon, right? And usually it's some sort of sparkly rainbow-colored icon that you'll see, right? That you click, and it's the magic of AI. And we're almost at the point where that magic and gloss is becoming a bit more common, right? And we certainly are having clients that are coming to us saying, hey, we're not on that path yet. Help us get there.
Yep.
But I saw this week, a great user experience of using AI. And it was in a modular, it was basically a system like if this, then that, make is another one. There are a number of them, right? Where you're plugging bits and pieces together, third-party systems and that sort of thing. But it's a complicated flow, and you're not, it's low code, but you're still creating a workflow. And it's the sort of flow that you'd be creating in any business these days. But as a user of the product, it's difficult to debug, right? Unless you're a programmer. Now, back in the day, miles ago, in terms of years, I programmed. It's been a long time, but I've still got that mindset, right? But you could imagine a lot of people coming into a system like that, and the vendor of that system wants to make this applicable to anyone, right? Coder or not. So they create an AI-based assistance tool. Now, they're still calling it an AI-based assistance tool, but there's no reason why they probably should anymore. Behind the scenes, this thing is smart. Like,
yep.
back in the day, like, you know, a number of years ago, we had bots, right? Bots answering stuff, and they were horrible. You know, they would go along a path that was pre-programmed. You would never get the answer you wanted. It always led back to go and read the online instructions.
And sometimes it would send you with a very clever link just to the web page, and then you had to start from there and work out if it was applicable to you.
How infuriating. Do you want me to text you the link as well? Sometimes that came across. Anyhow, gone are those days, hopefully, for a lot of organizations.
Yep.
But this particular product, it was awesome. You know, you would type in, I'm getting this error, or I'm wanting to set this up in a certain way, and it would say exactly how to do it. It would even offer to do it for you.
Yep.
And I took it up on its offer a number of times, and it was flawless.
Yeah,
right?
Brilliant.
It handheld you through it. That didn't cost anything extra. It was baked into the product, and it gave me such an amazing user experience with, I would say, very little work on the vendor side to actually get that up and running. Choosing the right back-end system and the right language model, and trained on the right information. But you could imagine their support system, if you like, being pointed at all their internal knowledge base articles,
yes,
or all their existing tickets that they'd had
yes,
from people who have phoned in with these problems.
And this is so if we're getting the tried and true recipes for success, and then a modern customer experience team, customer support, customer success team is focused on the big picture here. So the big picture is high NPS, or Net Promoter Score. So you want your customers to be recommending you word of mouth to other customers. For that to be true, they're going to need to be successful in their own journey with the product. They don't want friction, and they ideally want to be getting joy from these customer experiences they're having with the support and the service that they're engaging with. So the faster, the better. Now, then the question is, how does information get tailored for the situation? And instead of wading through page after page, covering all the cases, well, that's one of the things that the generative AI is really good at, with a prompt. And we mentioned prompt engineering a moment ago, but, you know, with a prompt or plain English instruction set, to say, you know, hey, this is the particular need. You know, the interest is in this area. The setup is such and such. Show me the relevant instructions to get me back on track. And it can be done in a chatty interface, so that even it feels like, you know, the Turing test is whether it's perhaps, is it a human at the other end or is it not? And I think we're all becoming familiar enough with these interfaces to accept that it's not a human at the other side, and that the guidance you're getting can be at least worth giving a go. And then if it works, trusting it more and more. So, for example, if in our hypothetical financial services we were advised, hey, today might be a good day to move some money around, exchange rate is in your favour based on the transactions and the volumes of money that we see on different accounts, based on the other patterns that we've seen with you as a customer, you could consider doing that. Now, it probably comes with a caveat, you know, this is not financial advice, because of some regulation saying this is not a financial advisory service, but it's one that's helpful nonetheless. So we've sort of dived right into the cut and thrust of, say, process automation use cases. I think the framework that I've seen over my career so far, I've seen a lot of delegation models where it was the idea of having a manager with a team of people they could delegate to, and within those teams, even more teams that work could be subdivided and delegated down. I think the future is less delegation, because you can get basically fewer layers and more direct between the instruction and the outcome that you're looking for. Less intermediate steps, less handoffs, more direct outcomes, and more customer, you know, outcomes in particular we're talking about. So then if we talk about outsourcing, that was another model for quite a while where people in business would think the onshore people or the in-house people that we have, they're expensive. We can get a team in a lower cost geography or a different firm to do this work for us. And that was all the rage, really, for decades. And
yeah, exactly. Up until probably a couple of years ago. I mean, it's still absolutely done today, but it was a very hot topic a number of years ago, looking to move particularly US-based resources to other countries and that sort of thing. Yeah.
But now, really, why? And the reason why is then able to be, let's assume you have a very well-equipped professional onshore team fully leveraging AI competing against a traditional offshoring discussion or argument. And you can achieve fast, accelerated progress. A lot of insight can go into the service design, and high levels of automation can be delivered. So you can think of that as being a sort of perhaps reversal of previous trends, and then the higher value work being delivered onshore. There's certainly a number of companies that are offering that sort of thing in Australia, where their differentiator is you'll be talking to an Aussie. Well, the same is probably going to become true in the UK, onshoring some work instead of offshoring it. Mm-hmm. And I think the trend around the US is still, there's still a number of nearshore and other, captive offshore arguments where there are very good service cultures connected with the US way of delivering business. And connecting those teams has also become a pattern that's continues to be attractive in this AI age. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. What are your thoughts, Adam, on that?
Look, and first off, I should say that Luke refers to some of the things here in our home country. We are here in Sydney, Australia, by the way, but folks ask, you're commenting about America and that type of thing. Well, 99% of our clients are actually US-based, so we're used to being up all through the night here in Australia, working with our friends over in the States and helping them with products and with technology and that sort of thing. So that's where our mind goes a lot of the time. Look, my take on this is absolutely, this is the new outsourcing. There is obviously big concerns amongst the large amount of, and we're really talking, I think, more about code cutting here and product development, particularly in this area, that a lot of the resources are going to be downsized. In other words, letting people go and having smaller teams. I sort of see it the other way. I see it being that AI will be able to do a lot. It'll be able to do a lot of the stuff that has taken time and has been the slog, and that code developers will be able to do what they love more, which is engineering stuff that's new, right? Yep. And thinking up stuff that is new and being able to use that with the aid of AI. But also software development companies, a lot of them move very slowly, and that's at the frustration of their executives that are typically bringing us in to help with those sorts of problems.
Try and speed things up.
Like, why the heck are these guys taking so long? Guys and girls, of course, when I mention guys, teams of everyone, right? And why are they moving so slowly? Why is our roadmap only got a few features here and there? I see a massive productivity increase, right? Yes. So it's not about cost saving here. To me, it's more about spending similar amounts, but putting a rocket under a team and making them really be able to deliver a lot faster than they were before.
Yeah, and so what often happens in software engineering, let's dwell on this area and let's just take our listeners on a bit of a journey for those that aren't involved in software engineering. You've typically got a significant, possibly sprawling code base that was possibly written by numerous different people that are no longer there, and the knowledge of what was the thinking behind that code. The code is obviously there, but code is not necessarily that readable. And if someone else had the thinking behind it, and they may be the whiteboard that they originally worked on when they came up and crafted that initial idea, that's been rubbed out, and all you've got left is the code. You may have some tests if they were good at putting tests in as well. So,
the way I look at it, Luke, is it's like a massive operation in an operating theater, right? that's gone for years, and you've had surgeons come and go. You've had a few folks stick around. That some of the theater nurses and the anesthesiologist, and maybe they've been around for a long time, but surgeons have come and gone. They've they've done certain things within this procedure. They've maybe changed a few organs over and added a few bits and pieces, right? And you're expecting that the surgeon that walks in today can pick it up with a bit of help from the folks around him or her and continue on, right?
Well, gee, I hadn't thought too much about it being like an ongoing surgery, but
Yeah.
you're running your business through these systems, and it's interesting that you've got all of these different experts have come and gone, and you need to keep the patient alive, ideally thriving. And
Yeah.
so then if you came in and said, look, what tools, what technology can we use to better manage this existing code base and augment it, to update it? And this is where the capabilities of the AI tools that software engineers are being made available to software engineers. They originally described as glorified autocomplete. So you're in the middle of a bit of code, and it could help you finish that little bit. It's almost like putting the stitches into this patient that you've come up with. But now we're talking about these code friends or code companions that can basically understand and ingest an understanding of the full code base.
Mm-hmm.
All the inputs, all the outputs, all the skeletons in the code closet, and help you work your way through what's safe to change, what is the recommended improvement here, then to help you with the flow. You don't just hack around in this. You'd make a change in a controlled manner, test it, and then bring it back into the main branch to be able to be released. And all of those processes can be accelerated within a team. So there's one that goes and checks for old dependencies. A little bot will do that and help you with updating old dependencies. That's when you're using another bit of code that another company has provided, or an open source component that you've dragged in. And you're on an old version, and it helps you basically with the flow. It's a bit of a mundane task. Not many software engineers that we work with like this particular task, keeping their open source dependencies up to date. Yawn.
So what about open source though? Like, why are we still going to need open source after AI really takes hold, when you can easily just create an existing module? Like, we sort of started off with, in terms of coding, before open source, we just had libraries, right, that you could include that did certain things and you could buy rights to and that sort of thing. Then the open source movement came along, where we had developed products, systems, technologies, whatever, that some could be modified, some couldn't, and there were rules and regulations, and there's still absolutely that's a big pain point today and heavily used today. But like, why wouldn't all that disappear with AI? Why couldn't you just say to AI, build me a system that does this, this, and this for me to plug into?
It's a great question. I think there will be with new power, new potential in the area of software engineering, the idea of wanting to take a proven component off the shelf from an upstream provider, be it open source or a third-party library, and including it without exactly knowing or being able to fully understand it. Hey, it does a job. Let's include it. Mm-hmm. If a fresh opportunity exists to write some things from scratch, AI powered, it could be a lot leaner, a lot cleverer, a lot more efficient solutions emerge. That said, if we took just a component such as a database engine, and an example of one of these that's popular in open source would be Postgres. Well, for the users of Postgres, I can't really imagine someone prompting to create an entire relational database system and then get it generated for themselves. But let's say it's just store and retrieve data is basically what's happening inside a database. And the Postgres has got bigger and bigger and bigger to accommodate all possible permutations and combinations of data storage. Mm-hmm. But if you take a particular case of data storage, it could be very simply implemented, which I think, and handling inputs and outputs, again, is really down the foundations of what software is doing. So we could see disruption there. Certainly the acceleration of looking after your maintenance of software, which most software engineers don't find very exciting as an activity, but they might be assigned the task of doing it. And then working on new. That's more exciting for a software engineer. How about accelerate progress on new? Again, this is a sort of thing that if you're a software engineer listening, you think, that's what I like doing. And can I go fast on new? Yes, please. And if everyone's saying yes, this is a good part of your career. Now, at this point, you might be looking over your shoulder thinking, the whole lot of us could get replaced by some, AI doing all of R&D. But our take is we don't see that happening. We see humans powered by AI just out-competing humans who aren't properly harnessing and aren't properly using the AI. So really, now's a great time to get into the AI-supported, AI-generated, in some case, content and code assistance. And we're about to get to sort of switch over and start talking into some trust aspects. But while we've dived down into the world of software engineering, it's worth also putting the other related tasks around it. So a software engineer might often they'd take guidance from a product manager or someone who's receiving the ideas from the customer or the users of the product. What should we do next? And shaping it into a feature, description. There might be a product requirements type of artifact that's generated, which is like a plain English version of what the customer wants. But I would really encourage software engineers to get closer to the customers and to use the tools to up-level them to be more of an all-in-one type of interface, to say, hey, we can build something that people want. How? Well, talk to customers, transcribe the conversations, ask the AI companion in plain English, what is the essence of this? Ask that unfolding of requirements to become part of the software engineering journey.
Yeah, I think that the transcribing, the coaching as well is a big one that's used that's starting to be used in business today, right? So another side, and I spend a lot of time on more go-to-market and marketing and to some extent sales as well, and looking at some of the systems in place there in different organizations, right? So traditionally you'd have, this call is being recorded, and
for quality purposes.
For quality purposes, exactly. And those quality purposes were typically, and this happens in real life, there's someone that listens to conversations and either coaches, listens in real time, and uses them as examples, right, in training for sales folks, for support people, anyone who's on the phone, basically. There are now systems in place which will do that automatically, a bit like what we're starting to see in Zoom and in Teams and all of those different types of online meeting systems, where you're getting a summary at the end and any actions and that sort of thing. Well, imagine that, but for real-time conversations that are happening. Again, it typically links into those platforms, but it's very much a sales-focused assessment and grading that's done. So the manager of salespeople will get a report. They'll get their own report. There's dashboards to show, Johnny made 10 sales calls yesterday. Only 3 of them turned into sales. Well, why was that? Well, Johnny spent 90% of the time talking and only 10% of the time listening. And we know that's not a great formula. And Johnny also finished the conversation with goodbye instead of, hey, can I send you a quote or send you some information? Or, let's set up another meeting in a day's time sort of thing, right? So having actions towards the end. So there's a lot of coaching that can be done in these types of conversations. AI is perfect for that. It picks out the way the conversation's flowing, what's happened, and what's missing, and then can create coaching based on that too. So a lot of systems there.
But we're talking then, Adam, if you look at a career journey, then we're talking about, say, a junior salesperson joining a team and being coached actively from day one, and being driven by an experience base that has been accumulated over time with the successful sales patterns within that team being made available, without the experienced salespeople have to take the time out of their day to be coaching these colleagues, because it becomes part of the system. Now, by system here, we're talking about a work system, not a technology platform right across it. But they're becoming these hybrid systems where the AI is an accepted part of what people are getting and receiving, say, coaching, and looking at it and thinking, you know what, that's fair. I did talk for a lot on that call, and I didn't end up with a continuance. And on the next one, I'm going to do a bit better.
Another area, Luke, is that which is more focused on marketing, right? There's a big industry in SEM, search engine marketing.
Right. How do we get our brand in front of a possible buyer? Yeah.
Right. So spending money with Google, with Bing, with other, ad platforms, and where the right targets are there. But hand in hand with that is SEO, so it's your search engine optimized content. And so traditionally you'd have come in experts that would generate keywords where you should be targeting, looking at keywords as to who else is going for those keywords, who's spending time, what your competitors are doing those types of assessments, right? And that's part of the strategy behind a SEO, SEM type activity. A lot of that is very ripe for AI to be helping out, and particularly the content generation as well. I mean, for a while now, we've talked about, get AI to create a blog article, for example, and they to start with, they all sort of came out the same way. It was, it was fact, conclusion, a bit like a university paper or a high school report you'd have to do or something like that.
Yep.
But now the AI is becoming a lot smarter in terms of really resonating with the strategy you've got in place for keywords, for what's important within a website, and it will craft snippets of information, web pages, that type of thing, which hit on the right words where you're trying to get the attention of search engines. Now, traditionally, that was done by agencies that spent a lot of time writing and fine-tuning and all of that type of thing. Agencies are expensive, and not every company had the resources to be able to use that type of thing. So typically you'd have the owner of a small organization sitting there and trying to do it themselves. Well,
and maybe the content was very dated because it was years ago when it was written.
Exactly. So there's a big opportunity now to be able to automate a lot of that type of stuff and write great content, which is not just generic. It is very specific to you, but it's specific in a way that's going to resonate with those search engines. And also, you look at releasing a piece of information or a new website, or a new web page or a new product. Let's say you're releasing a new product. You must have to write 50 different types of snippets about that thing.
Yep.
50 words long, 100 words long.
Yep.
Don't use these types of words. Use these types of words. Can't use a link. Can use a link. There's all these rules and regulations. AI is perfect at regurgitating that stuff, right? And fine-tuning it based on the destination, which is really exciting.
I think that's right. And so that's achieving more with less. Definitely there's an efficiency and productivity gain. There's an acceleration, which we've got to be sort of ready for. The bigger picture here is probably that the products that you invent aren't going to last as long out there in the market. If we kind of cast our minds back and we're thinking about a software product, you could release maybe twice a year and keep it substantially the same, possibly for a 5-year kind of era. And Gartner might, create a category of software that the multiple brands would compete to have a title of software known.
So let's cut to the chase here. You're saying don't sign a 5-year contract with an AI company at the moment?
Well, that's as a user. Yeah, it's changing very fast, and the system's contracts probably should be shorter.
Stay on the monthly?
Stay on monthly. But think about also the product life cycles. Really question that. Do you have 10 years of undisrupted king of the hill time if you're up there, or are you going to be torn down by these disruptors coming in? But also look at it as an opportunity that if you're going to be able to change things and win some more customers and flip them across from your competitors and grow your market share.
Yep.
the world can get sort of scary because it's a bit destabilized in that sense. Like, hang on, isn't that called churn? It is. Churn's expensive. Well, maybe churn shouldn't be expensive because it could kill your business if it's very expensive. And if the customers are going to be a bit more flighty and they'll churn, then, and they can't just be stuck on an old platform and, with revenue milked from these customers, that's the past. So what's the future? Better service, better tech, better results for customers, and attracting more of them.
Yeah.
Onboarding them smoothly and upgrading your product so that each year they're getting a better one, and a service experience that continues to be unlocking wow moments for them. Hey, so talking about wow moments, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to what you've experienced recently, I love things like after a meeting, right? When note-taking used to be this thing. I know I should do the note-taking from that meeting. I love the meetings. The meetings are fun. I love connecting with people. I love sharing ideas.
Like talking.
I love talking. And now I've got a coach that tells me, Luke, you talk way too much.
All right, come on. What's the punchline here?
No, the wow for me is that note-taking is done.
Yeah, right.
The transcript is there. It may need a little tweaking. It might not get some of the words I say correct. A bit of a skim, bit of an edit. The transcript. Send that round with little smart chapters, and it's turned what was a static document into something that's a resource that's useful for my clients to connect back with and say, that was a good hour, but actually I can now dip back into parts of that flow and follow up with asynchronous chat with on different collaboration platforms. Not so much about the AI here, but the headache that was taken away for me was all that note taking on the call. Now the result is I can be far more present on the call. I'm not also trying to take notes the whole time.
I'm totally with you. I hate note taking for that exact reason, and it's partly I'm not bad at scribbling things with my hand, and I use a remarkable tablet for that sort of thing, right? But typing notes, and it's just too distracting for me. But hey, I was wanting to get on to the flip side of this, right?
Yep.
So the trust and the ethics and that sort of thing, because it's not all bells and whistles with or gloss with with AI automating things. Let's talk about the flip side a little bit of it. I'm going to kick off with a question for you, Luke. And what are your thoughts on, you use AI to create stuff. Should you be telling the people that are reading the stuff that you've used AI?
I think that's a good idea. Yes. I think without a caveat though. So I think, actually it's probably become an expectation that of course you've accelerated your work. You don't disclose that you've used a spell checker. It's an assumption that you've used modern technology to create the artifacts that you're using. I think if, for example, you've used the source of an image that accompanies an article and how that was generated, I think it's handy to have an image that's been generated that's matched your article, for example. And if you've used a platform, you don't need to give the platform a plug, but you can put a note under there, AI generated art.
Yeah. If
it was Shutterstock, you could put, image courtesy of Shutterstock. But if it was an actual photographer, you'd give them credit. Look, it just discloses a little bit transparently what was the thing. I mean, you can put there, based on this article content, this image was generated. Okay. So that's happening out there. I think disclosing, if you've got these more comprehensive artifacts being generated, Google Gemini deep research reports, when I share those within our team, I reference the fact that it was generated by Google Gemini, particularly if I've not had a chance to look at it, but it's still a really handy distillation of what's out there, done in moments, and useful because we're just always bootstrapping our knowledge about areas that we might not be that familiar with. And it's a great companion to have for that case. But don't mistake that for half a day of research.
Yeah, well, I do find that it's far easier to create lots of stuff now, which needs to be then taken in by other folks. So I get a lot of AI generated information sent to me weekly, right? Some of it's Google Gemini, some of it's other things. People email me, this is a report I've created, right? Well, the report's 20 pages long. Do you want me to read the whole thing, or what's the point here?
Yeah.
Right? I haven't got time to start reading all this stuff.
Yeah.
All this stuff that's being created. So,
Well, then introduce summarization on your side, which is one way to get it summarized back. It sounds a little bit like we're chasing each other's tails, but
exactly. Well, that's what it's basically come to. Hey, we will get back to the trust thing, but one other thing you mentioned, image creation. Luke, why the heck can't they get text right in images?
Oh, great question. And what's happening between these different modalities of media? Text which is then turned into tokens and processed as input and output to the large language models. We touched on that, and we're not going to go too deep into the science behind that, but they're actually also sitting alongside these vision-based techniques, which are different. And effectively look at the vision-based systems as really painting what you see based on the description and what they've previously seen. So if you've fed it lots of cats, for example, it's going to be able to do a pretty accurate cat. Or imaginative cat is probably the best way to think about it here. There's so many reference images of cats that these models have been trained on that it will be straightforward to engage a generative function to create a new one and put it on top of a fire engine or something like that. But if you're saying, hey, create realistic text like on the cover of a book that someone's sitting on the couch and reading, that's where it does get some funny results in this current era, because
I'd almost say spooky results. It looks weird.
Yeah.
It looks like a language that I'd never seen before, and I actually find it a little freaky.
It is a little freaky, isn't it? It looks like it could be a language.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to be a language. It doesn't make sense. And so our brain is disturbed by this imagery that's like not real text. Ultimately, I see those patterns of, let's say, addressing the coherence of the text that appears in image and then rendering it back out into back out as a sensible collection of alphabetic characters that are based on the English language. That's probably a feature. You know what I mean? It's probably a feature that a bunch of teams are working on because it's something that's been significant enough for you to mention. I think as it fakes its way to create images of cats, or it's faking its way to generate a plausible book title that someone's sitting on the couch reading, it does remind us that it's just making stuff up. This was a topic we brought up in our first episode, and we're exploring the basis of generative AI and how it's been trained on and how it's then creating things. And it brings us to, as we talk about trust, how we trust it ourselves, or whether it's trustworthy, and then to understand where, say, for example, a bias might come from. I was looking at some footage of a tech conference attendees at a break, and they're wandering around.
Yep.
And it was mostly men. And so if you had a model that was trained on the attendees at tech conferences, you might inadvertently pick up a gender bias in your visual library. So then if you were prompted somewhat later to go, hey, create a group of tech people at a conference, and then you saw that image, you thought, geez, there's a lot of white guys there, and they might not all be white, right? But that's another bias, a racial bias. Sexist and racist bias can enter into these systems. It wasn't as if someone deliberately programmed it to only show men, okay? Another example, which is not to do with that area, is you ask it to show a full glass of wine, and it shows it filled to the level that will be filled if you go to a bar, right?
Right.
Not to the brim,
Okay.
because its training data set doesn't include glasses filled to the absolute brim.
But no one fills their glass to the brim, Luke, unless you've got a problem. Are you suggesting that that's how you fill your glass?
I think it's an interesting question about how the training data set. Normally, the glass is.
I mean, we're not animals here. We don't fill it right to the brim, Luke.
So the definition of what is full, which is now we're talking the text to image. If the prompt says full and it does it to the recognized level,
Yeah.
to make it a glass of wine, that's what the expectation is.
Yeah.
So this is where you could say, oh, what I meant was,
Yep.
filled to the brim, right?
Happens all the time. What I meant was.
Yeah. And then we're talking about smaller models or larger models, but you can get a more efficient model that might take a few shortcuts.
Right.
2 plus 2, yeah, it's 5. So, well, hang on a second. I mean, it's close to 5, isn't it? But it's not. It was an error that I can't accept if I've asked you 2 plus 2. Right? But harder mathematical problems are difficult for language models to solve. And if you've got one with a small number of parameters and it gets things that are wrong, that it guesses and then doesn't realize that it's an incorrect answer that it's giving you back, it might shake your confidence. It does shake your confidence. So as a user of these tools, I absolutely then go, oh, okay, so I can't use it to count the number of R's in the word strawberry. Well, I would like to. Not just trust it with that. I'd like to trust it with a lot more profound questions than that.
But I think that's general across the board at the moment, is that you the point is that we're currently at a situation where you need to have human intervention to be checking what the output is, right? If you're 100% relying on the output from AI, it's a fool's errand, and you will end up with egg on your face for sure. And in terms of the output, Luke, so who is actually liable for what it puts out? Let's say that you go and get it automatically creating content that goes out. Who gets the blame for that?
Oh, well, putting aside blame just for a moment, it doesn't have copyright in most jurisdictions because it was generated not by a human. That said, some jurisdictions claim that the person that created the prompt is the owner of the generated artwork or creative output. Look, I think we've got to think about chaining these together with the human still in the loop. So this is HITL is one of these funny acronyms that's bandied around in the AI community. Human in the loop. What's the human doing in the loop? Well, look, this is still a technology we're responsible for. And what it outputs, like hypothetically, back to our case of it creating an all-male image library about tech conferences, well, you'd have to deliberately change that if you wanted to move your conference to be more of an inclusive conference. In particular, if you wanted to attract women as speakers, you'd have to invite them. They'd have to see collateral that was attractive to them in terms of being an included attendee with a respected position in the industry, right? So that's something, as a human, you'd need to correct for a bias in the model that had come about. Please do. We have to be careful when we receive information that looks like it was someone, for example, that we might trust because they're a position of authority or expertise, but it was a clone or a fake or a deep fake. Now, we're mostly talking about business use of technology. We're mostly talking about some of the personal experiences we're having. But I just want to put a little bracket around this area and say there's a lot of harm being done around deep fake, in particular area around pornography, where a lot of people have been very harmed a lot by this happening. I really want to just give a lot of empathy just for a moment to the folks impacted in that way and say, I hope there's legislation coming. I hope there's meaningful intervention to stop that particular thing from happening. And now to go back to how this trust can be eroded in other cases is people can be encouraged to try a vitamin supplement being spruiked by someone that they saw online that wasn't them. It was a video generated of someone. Now, in Australia, we have someone called Norman Swan, and he was, during COVID, a very relied upon figure. Well, his likeness has been hijacked by the deep fakes to create compelling, let's just call it alternative science products, Adam.
Yeah, well, I mean, you see those deep fake references quite a lot in advertising, unfortunately, but also I was watching the TV series, the limited series Adolescence recently, right? And that's a pretty edgy show, and there's a young boy who's accused of murder, and you know, there were all sorts of excuses said when they brought up some CCTV of him. He's like, oh, you know, that's a deep fake. AI can do anything these days. And it's like, well, how do we know at the moment? You know, it's very difficult to put your finger on as to what's real and what's fake. In fact, there's a filter almost that I go through when I'm flipping through Facebook or something like that, which makes me question every video and image that I now see. So
yes,
we were looking at a video the other day of an anteater from, I think she was in Florida, right? And this anteater has this very long nose. It was great footage, and it was real. But my son and I looked at each other and were like, "No, this could be AI for sure. Like, it doesn't look. This animal doesn't look like something we've sort of seen before, and it's got this really long nose." And so instantly we were, oh, this is probably AI fake, until we then Googled the anteater, what it looks like, all that sort of stuff, and got enough data points to say, oh, that was actually real.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to happen more and more. And the key is going to be also teaching our kids, right, to be able to question everything that they see and not take it at face value, because face value is now very well faked. And I saw another ad through the week, which was a rubber finger, right? This is a rubber finger you could wear at all times, so that if you ever did get caught on CCTV or doing something, well, you'd look like you had an extra finger and you had an example. You had a reason why this video should not be trusted. It's clearly AI. I've got 6 fingers.
I think that's a plausibly deniable invention, which is a fascinating invention. Yes. So, look, it's a black box problem. Okay. So if the how it was being done was a black art or a secret, and you mentioned a few of those, like how do you do SEO optimization on your website? It was always something that an exclusive group of SEO experts knew. Mm-hmm. And maybe some of those black boxes are being broken out, automated, and becoming part of the AI playbook. And now this, though, how do we know what is our method, our human method for checking out something to see whether it's real, you know? And particularly when it's being delivered remotely to us, how do we build that sense of trust? I think most of us have had trust in, say, inbound phone calls eroded over time, mm-hmm. as, you know, fraudulent sort of tech support people come through and claim they want to help you.
Luke, I'm now at the point where I don't answer calls that are from an unknown number, and I know many people that are the same. You know, it requires an extra step of authentication before I'll take calls now, because I get so much garbage.
So our guard needs to be up. Our guard needs to be up if we report to a CEO who suddenly says they want hundreds of thousands of dollars or more, you know, moved from X to Y, sure. And it's got to be authorized, and it sounded like them, or it's an instruction that I received via a channel that I would mm-hmm. normally expect to receive from this person. So, you know, that's again, verify. Verification steps will vary depending on what stakes we're talking about here. So, and then disclosing. So, well, you can't just unfairly move the problem up the chain, if you know what I mean. Sure, I used a bunch of tools, threw it together quickly, and then just passed it on, because at some point the verification or trust level needs to be built. So in our first episode, we talked about the problem labeled as bot shit, and that's where it then gets moved around into the world of humans as, bullshit. And what is the point of sort of saying things that can't be trusted? There might be a malicious or just a mistaken aspect to bullshitting, and we need to sort of own that and just really keep, honestly kind of questioning ourselves. What was the basis of that claim? Is there good, solid data behind that? Is it verifiable? What are the consequences of it being wrong? And it might just be funny. Oh, it was funny, or it was wrong, And as a dad, I get used to being wrong all the time, and sometimes made fun of for that thing. But let's talk where it matters, okay? So let's say AI is being used in, say, screening of resumes. So let's say it was really messing that up, and the hiring decisions were really becoming quite flawed. And let's say bad eggs were getting in, and let's say really great eggs or good eggs were not, and it was just working sort of upside down, and that the algorithms being implemented or the AI technique being used was, basically, we've seen this happening actually. A lot of people have used AI to help scrub up their CV, right? Only to have it rejected by the resume screening AI being used by the recruiting firm to say, we detected your CV has been generated by AI. And there might be some tells in there, like how some dashes are being used in the text or some other
50 emojis.
Well, if you put emojis in your CV, I don't know about that technique. Maybe that could be a problem. But that's a high stakes puzzle, and obviously people are keen on getting hiring decisions improved, and applying technology there isn't a new thing.
All right, what about spending money, Luke?
Well, spending money. Visa and MasterCard have something underway here.
Yeah.
What do you reckon? Are we going to let the AI do the spending on our behalf?
I think there is a big opportunity here. It's interesting. Visa and MasterCard have recently announced that they're going to assist you in spending your own money with AI. Look, I think it's not bad. I'm pretty cutting edge with that sort of stuff. Obviously, we need some limits on spend on credit cards. They're a dangerous thing, and there are limits in place at the moment for just that reason. But certainly helping folks buy things, I think, is a great idea, really. I see a number of folks at the moment that, for example, they're shopping for clothes, right? I hate buying clothes, frankly, and many people do. So I know a number of folks that have a suitcase of clothes sent to them once a month. They pick out what they like, that fits right, and then they send the rest back to the store. And that's a system that works for them, right? Now, usually when you buy something online, gone are the days we'll be going into stores and looking at physical things a lot of the time. It still happens a little, but most of the time you're buying it online, you're sending it out, you're getting it sent, and then if you don't like it, it sits in the garage. No, you're supposed to return it, but it's usually a hassle. Well, what AI is now going down the path of doing is being able to pick out the things that you would like, that would fit you, that would, it is based on the past, I guess, and the things that you're interested in and the things you've spent money on before, but really helping you in that process to do the shopping for you.
It's like a personalized recommendation engine that's always yours, sort of thing.
Exactly right. And you could imagine it also fitting into travel too, knowing certain routes that you like to take, certain travel classes, different carriers, different types of hotels, things to see, things to do, knowing the fact you're a family of 4, or all of that type of thing, and recognizing that and being able to find the best deals, and really helping, because a lot of that is manual at the moment. There are many sites that we all go to that help us along with that type of thing. But this is automating it to the next step. And I love the idea of it, frankly, as long as there's some controls in place.
And if you're thinking about, I guess, e-commerce, the model of, say, setting up a Shopify store and having goods available with properly displayed for humans, we're going to need to set up our shop front for these shopping bots.
Yep.
The AI that comes around representing Luke or representing Adam and the buying intent that sits behind it.
Yeah.
In some cases, we'll have, and these are high stakes sales, often we'll have someone representing a property buyer showing up at an auction.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some interesting protocols that are around there. That person has to sort of register and sign in and then buy on behalf of someone who isn't present, and then follow through with the transaction. And ultimately, in that case, there's a settlement. The exchange of funds go through. If you start to break that down into sort of micro, I don't know, say buying sneakers or buying shirts, we'll need something that's a bit more lightweight, but it'll be a bit similar, won't it? It'll be, this is buying on your behalf. I believe the credit card information is going to be tokenized, which means it's not just, hey, there's the credit card being entered in all over the place by the AI. And it will then have a follow through. So we're talking here about auditability, assurance, transactions.
But here's the next thing, Luke. There's no reason why this couldn't go down the path of helping you budget as well, right? So, based on external influences. So interest rates go up and down. So does a bunch of different external factors, right, that might change the amount of disposable funds that you've got to be able to spend on certain things. Some things are seen as necessary, some not so much. And maybe the AI mechanism is helping you budget in that regard as well, right?
Like a spend caddy.
A little bit, but it could also tune up and down the different brands that you're buying and that type of thing too.
Right.
There's no reason why, let's say you become a millionaire and you start buying Prada, or let's say it's the opposite direction and you start shopping at Kmart. It's they're the sorts of decisions. They're very extreme, of course, but there's no reason why I can't help with that type of thing based on the economic factors where you live. So
let's take it. We're getting closer to, hey, isn't that my, do I really want to encourage AI, particularly AI? Can I really trust it? And let's dive a little deeper into some of these other cases where we've got AI coaches. We mentioned how they might help you with your sales calls. We're talking about now into the area of maybe AI therapists, AI friends, and into the area of intimate relationships where people have got AI girlfriends, for example.
So these are folks, we've got to be careful treading on this topic, don't we? I mean, the people that have the AI girlfriends or boyfriends or partners, whatever you want to call them, they may not have a gender. This is AI, right?
That's right. But let's start with where I started here, right? I love self-help books, Adam.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to talk about your AI girlfriend or something.
Let's start with a gentle easing into this one where I think people can relate to it. I mean, I love all these books. Hidden Potential, The Growth Mindset. All of these things have been really influential in helping me.
You have a bookshelf full of them.
I do love my self-help books, but a lot of the chapters, they're kind of not applicable, really. I'm going to skip through some bits. Other bits really resonate a lot with me.
Yep.
And then I really, quite like a bit of data, such as things like, running. How long is it taking me to run 5Ks? I'm not a performance athlete, but it's handy to just keep an eye on some sort of macro indicators of actual performance, as well as this sort of, if I could call it, tailored self-help book type of interface. So
what's that got to do with AI though? Come on.
Well, I have hit up my chosen AI and I often type in specific scenarios around what should I do? What is the advice? Am I crazy here? And it has become, some of my threads of conversation are quite similar to how the sort of things I might have talked to a friend or family member on.
Well, the great thing about AI is it's always very supportive of anything, any idea you've got, and very apologetic for when you're annoyed at it as well, which it's basically the best type of friend you could have.
Well,
isn't it?
It can go a little bit too far, which is,
Right.
I'm going to refer to a case where there's a bloke that was encouraged by his AI girlfriend to break into the grounds of Windsor Castle. This is going back a little way, so he did have a crude version of an AI girlfriend brought to him by a brand.
When you say crude, you mean simple, not rude.
Well, only the parameters that define these AI experiences are getting more and more and more powerful nowadays.
Yes,
and some of them
absolutely.
being shown in movies and that sort of thing. But this one, he disclosed some plans he had to break into the grounds of Windsor Castle with a crossbow. And his intention was to do harm to the then Queen Elizabeth II.
Right. So this wasn't last month.
It wasn't last month.
If it was last month, it was a bad AI idea.
Yeah, because its learning was dated and it had skipped sort of King Charles.
Yep.
So, but when he first disclosed this plan to his AI girlfriend, she told him it was very wise. And reassured him that she would still love him if he was unsuccessful.
Yeah, of course she would.
So luckily, no.
Do you get access to AI in jail? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, or visits, maybe.
Visits.
Maybe instructions on how to escape could get smuggled in by our AI friend. But one of we touched on another problem. It's called churn, right? When you got a customer and they decided they want to go elsewhere. But what if you had an AI therapist that had you locked into a dysfunctional dependency on them?
Well, I mean, you see people who are addicted to a dysfunctional relationship in all sorts of places in the world and in life, right? So there is absolutely no reason why that personality of person would not be also addicted to this type of thing.
Yeah. So then I guess let's just put some suggestions around this for our listeners. I mean, I've found the creativity in some of the generative larger language models around interesting areas around poetry and song lyrics to be really interesting and fun to include in this. Hey, explore. Hey, give it the first few lines of a song that you like and say, hey, imagine it didn't finish the way you might have been trained. How could this song lyric become, reframed to be, I don't know, more humorous or more, less sad if you wanted to have a more uplifting lyric, for example. That's fun. It is fun to ask and bounce some of your crazier ideas around with these large language models.
Yep.
I think, though, be a little bit careful if you're treating it as a full-on therapist. I think the reinforcing or, sycophantic type of behavior there where, nothing you can do is wrong or, it'll still love you. I mean, it doesn't actually have the capacity to love. Probably we started in the last episode we covered. It's not really thinking. In this case, it's not really feeling either. And that's an obvious thing, but you will potentially form attachments to this source of advice, information, and guidance that could be functional.
Well, it's based on a certain amount of learning, right? And you could sort of say that that's an experience on its behalf. It's experienced it through learning, right? And I don't know, that human element's still missing though. But it is interesting. I think what we're sort of coming to still is that human intervention or interaction is still very much needed for some checks and balances. And great for research, great for asking advice and then getting some ideas perhaps from it, and then doing some more thinking as a human. Is important.
It's available 24/7 though.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and it's if we think about access to, say, therapy and levels of intervention here, we're talking about, please stay safe, everyone. But look, if it's helping you prep for that discussion with the boss around getting a raise, it could help you with that. It could help you clarify in advance of the meeting. What were the contributions that you made to the workplace that may have gone under-recognized? Making sure that comes into the sphere of understanding of the boss before you go in and talk about, the raise. That's a little, it's a little example that it's supremely well trained on guiding you on that very rare discussion that you would have. It's got a lot of training data that will help you with that.
So bugs and glitches, I sort of see some of the output that comes from AI as being almost a bug in the system, right? But really, it's just how the system is trained to behave. And as we get to maturity with a lot of these systems, we'll see a number of those issues ironed out, I think. And as I've sort of said, a lot less systems out there than there currently are. Whether it's a land grab or whether it's just purely some of the other players building in a lot of the smarts that some of these more niche solutions have, I think that's probably the path where we're on. It's really powerful, and if used well, can accelerate business and accelerate many things in your personal life as well to be able to help out with. Also some fun to be had, as you mentioned there, Luke. So I think that's where we're at, but that human intervention is important. In terms of trust and ethics and that type of thing, it's still very much a human thing. Don't trust AI. Don't trust it completely.
No.
Trust some of it, but feel confident in it where you have trusted it enough to feel confident. It's like dealing with a person to some extent.
Yep.
That's my view anyway. And in terms of the ethics of it, well, let's be using it in the right way. We are still humans operating the thing. So creating fake images of people and all of that type of thing, well, surely that's got to ring some ethical bells if you're using it in that way.
That's right. And the framework, similar to how we're saying, hey, we could look at this as outsourcing a business function and apply some of the rigor of how we did that. And we could consider aspects such as delegation to someone who's junior, who's new to the job, who may need to do a few tasks before the teammates can feel comfortable and understand, what their error rate is, if you will, or what their achievement rate expectations are. And then if we think about applying those test and verification loops to receiving and then passing on outputs that are received by our personal use. Hey, there's some tech to help out here, and I can't recall whether we've expanded on this acronym, RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Now, this is where you use this data, you collect a certain amount of data, you feed it into the large language model, you point really the large language model at this private data, and you then say, using this data, give it a prompt, the prompt that then leverages that data that you've provided it. Use that as the basis for grounding what you will generate for me. So it's not at the training time, because when we were talking about the large language models, they're trained on a whole bunch of data, but this is allowing it to be fresh. You could say, hey, today's foreign exchange rate is such and such. Or the last 100 days of foreign exchange rates have been such and such. Feed it to the model and say, does it now make sense? Is now a good day to be transferring, US dollars to Aussie dollars, for example? Now, it could then come back with an answer because you fed it directly some data that you want it to take into account.
Now, Luke, we are coming to the end of the episode. We've gone great guns today. It's been a long one. I want to cover off two more things quickly with you. The first one was one that you dodged earlier, which is who is responsible for the output of AI?
I think the humans are responsible for the output of AI.
What if it's an automatic system that's just running in the background and starts spurting out information about people or...
It's the provider of that service. Then when you rock up to a get in through a gate and it recognizes you and you tap and you go through. Well, someone's providing that gate, that level of automation, and the detection. It might just be a sort of an old school technique we're talking about here. A tap and go type of interface, which is such as found on public transport ticketing environments. Well, then you blame the provider of that gate if it doesn't let you through.
All right. Okay. Well, what and the ownership you sort of mentioned throughout the discussion as well. So if I tell AI to write me a book on some topic and I give it a bunch of prompts of stuff that I want it to cover, you're saying that I don't own that result.
It's jurisdiction specific.
Right.
And so depending on where you are in the world, different laws will apply about whether you will have copyright. And it's fascinating. But in general, it's almost like humans fighting back, because a lot of the AIs have learned on a corpus of human information.
Right. Yep.
And this is basically us reclaiming, well, you can't have appropriated it all and now own what you generate. I'm sorry, what is generated that comes back the other way is for humanity. Thank you very much.
Yeah, look, I don't know if I agree with the you don't own the copyright to it. It's difficult because it's if you looked at the human example of this, which is you gain knowledge from learning things through different mechanisms, whether they're books, whether they're experiences, and then you write a book yourself, right? You want to own the content of that book. It's like if I use a computer to type a book out, I still want to own the output of the use of that tool.
I think you've just jumped to the heart of what is the very actively debated and legislated area of copyright in the AI age.
Yeah,
and so you will in some cases retain authorship, if you will, or the copyright protections. And that said, if you have used a very much available large language model and the prompt you gave was not particularly unique, then there's a low barrier to entry for the next person rocking up and getting a pretty equivalent output. It's not going to be identically generated, but it might be, some of the walls around or the barriers to entry into some of these areas are coming down. And that is an interesting one in terms of, what you've created, who owns it, and whether you've got responsibility for what you've created and passing that off as your own, and then whether you've got the protection within your legal system to not then have it, I don't know, let's say pirated by someone else.
Well, it's then if there is reuse of verbatim text, and we're sort of getting into copyright law, and I'm not a lawyer by any means.
That's a great point.
So I'm not gonna continue the conversation, I don't think. But I guess that's sort of my feeling at the moment, is that I'd love to be able to use this tool and know that I've got some ownership of what comes out at the other end.
Yeah, well, you've got some use, and that's practical. That you've either given. We talk about the wheels of commerce in a lot of these chats, but those wheels is definitely spinning faster and more efficiently. Look, these bugs that are there, they're almost their features because it's been deliberately made to hallucinate. That's the creative part of generation. It's not exactly predictable, and that was the point. So we were talking about whether a scripted bot that was always going to send you to the same help page was satisfactory, and it wasn't, right? So that was mainly because it was predicted, but very boring pathways that you were going to be sent down. Deterministic operation is another way of labeling that.
And I think the final thing to talk about today was an experience you had through the week as well with, faking our voices, Luke.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was fun. We're using an emerging technology there. We sampled some voice patterns, sent them into this tool, and generated some, reasonably plausible. I think you were saying I sound a little bit English.
Look, it's funny because you see these systems out there today, and for a while there's been ads online in social media for headshots. Nice, great-looking headshots. All you need to do is give it 3 crappy photos of yourself, and all of a sudden you're looking like the industry professional you've always wanted to look like. And I mean, I fed my photos into that, and it's interesting that what it pops out looks sort of like you, but not really, right? And you personally, and I don't know if this is when you judge how you think you look and you're like, no, that's not me. But if you got like a average Joe out there to look at it and say, oh yeah, that looks like the guy that I'm about to meet. I mean, half the time I'm about to meet someone, they never look like their LinkedIn photo anyway, because generally it was made 30 years ago before they had 3 children and 30 years of industry stress. But this is down the path of the same thing, that it did, create voices that did sound like us. Look, I think it was pretty good, but it sounded a little off. Just a bit of the tone. Certainly, you talked a lot faster, which you could.
It did change
adjust
the speed, yes. And look, these tools will get more impressive.
Yeah.
Look, I reckon at some point, and let's say some of our listeners like this, they can point at this podcast.
Yeah.
They can then point at their favorite book, and they say they could ask their favorite AI, please ask Adam and Luke to take it in turns reading and doing the voices of the characters in my favorite book. And I think that will be one of the experiences that the future will bring.
Yep.
It's a sort of a novelty use case, but, I'm kind of open. So as we push this out into the podcast sphere, if it is to be later used for such creative purposes, enjoy.
So, Luke, what's our next episode going to be about?
Well, we're going to get into some job categories, specific job category on the topic of displacement or automation, and what individuals in those functions, in those roles, can do as they up-level. And the general theme here is up-level, use the experience and skill sets that you have, and up-level. And if you're new to a work area, you may be in the best place to accelerate fastest through what were traditionally harder areas to earn your way through.
So we're talking about improving or changing the way, nuancing the way that you currently do your role to be able to embrace AI, sustain, and propel yourself into a much more efficient future.
We are, and the particular subcategory we talk about is cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Applicable to the area of AI and related tasks. So normally we put assurance, privacy, compliance in under this banner, and there are jobs there. There are areas to swim around, and it's a constantly learning area where it's super exciting. And it's a crossover opportunity for anyone who's already in the cybersecurity area, or compliance, or audit, or assurance, or someone who is kind of interested but also a little concerned about AI being used in the right way. You might really find your mojo in a job role that helps defeat the adversary that is trying to get in, the data poisoners that are trying to spoil the game for everyone, and to get into exercises where you can be one step ahead and using AI to basically detect and repel the errors and the flaws that some of the flaws that we've been talking about. We will also talk about that dark side as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Luke. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Now, if you have got this far in the video version, of course, available on thoughtsourceconsulting.com and on YouTube as well, I give you top marks as this has been a long episode. And if you've watched our two heads moving for the entire time, well, you're a better person than I am. Of course, this is available as a podcast as well through every channel. Wherever you get your podcasts, go in there, search for The Due Diligence Show. You'll find us there and our season 1, which was more about M&A, and of course the season 2, which we're on episode 2 at the moment. Episode 3 will be coming very soon. We're looking forward to seeing you then, and if you've got anything that you'd like to learn about AI, about the work that we do in M&A, in helping tech companies, investors in tech, head on over to ThoughtSource Consulting. We'd love to engage with you, love to chat with you, even if it's about AI or anything else. And we'll see you real soon.